Stipe Miocic takes on Jon Jones this Friday, next Saturday at UFC 309. And I am going to be breaking down every single fight on this card. And I'm going to be giving my predictions as I hope to sweep the entire card. I'm very confident on this card. I honestly think this is one of the easiest cards to break down. There may be a couple of curveballs here and there, so don't get me wrong. Just because I think that Stipe Miocic is going to win this fight doesn't mean that Jhonata doesn't have a chance. Now, I'm not going to tell you guys who I'm picking. But, before we get into it, I wanted to share with you guys a little thing that I like to call the Real Food Cookbook. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but the Real Food Cookbook is basically a cookbook. You could think of it as sort of like a Nookbook or something like that, something to keep in your kitchen, even though it's fully digital. The Real Food Cookbook is a great book to help you guys make good, hearty meals with whole and unprocessed ingredients. All right. And we got to get healthy, man. So if you guys are interested, I believe that Team Miocic actually reached out to me and they asked for 100 cookbooks. I don't know why Stipe would need 100, but they asked for 100 cookbooks. Apparently it's big in Ohio. So, yeah. If you guys are interested, code MMA for 30% off. And if you want to put on some mass, we got some fitness ones too. A couple of these fights were canceled. Okay, a couple of these fights were canceled. And unfortunately, we're not going to get the David Onama fight. And we are also not going to get the Density Max or Azamat Mirzakhanov versus the return of Nikita Krylov. Nikita Krylov still yet to fight in the UFC. He's fought in the UFC, but David Obama will not be fighting. I'm joking. David Onama will not be fighting either way. Let's get into this. We have a great matchup. This is a delightful matchup. It's a very good matchup. Eduardo Moura, she's always been one of these, you look at Eduardo Moura and, she's got that Amanda Nunes type of vibe. You know what I mean? You look at Eduardo Moura, you expect, whoa, dude, you expect like Chris Cyborg music to start playing. I don't know what Chris Cyborg's music would be, but you would expect someone to come out looking like Chris Cyborg. She's not like Chris Cyborg. She's not the biggest WMMA fighter in her division. She's not like Kayla Harrison. She's not on anything, I don't think. So, at first glance, you may think, well, Eduardo Moura, she's got to be dangerous. She actually lost her last fight. Won in the Dana White Contender Series. She lost her last fight. So right off the bat, she's looking like a really tough cookie, but, she's actually in for a bit of a tricky fight. Now, Veronica Hardy, I am going to pick Veronica Hardy to win this, and we'll get into some of those reasons, but I believe that Veronica Hardy is getting very close to her ceiling. You watch Veronica Hardy and a lot of her fights, she's had a resurgence in her career. She was really struggling in the UFC, and now she's strung 3 wins in a row together since she took a lot of time off. But all but one of those fights, the last 2, have been pretty close. And I do think that Eduardo Moura, including most of the women in this division, are bigger than Veronica Hardy. And I think that Veronica Hardy, she's very skilled, but she's just, she doesn't have a lot of pop. She doesn't have a lot of strength. And I think that she's never going to be champ in this division, especially because some of these fights are close. I think that Eduardo Moura, I think she has a lot of potential, but I think that Veronica Hardy is at that level where she may not be top 10. I feel like maybe the 10th spot in her division is like where she could get to max. I just don't think Eduardo Moura is good enough to beat a top 10 level fighter right now. Whereas I think Veronica Hardy, she's in her prime, and I think that she is the best she's ever going to be. She's holding it down right now, and I honestly think she's going to beat Eduardo Moura. She's a decent striker. She's a decent grappler, and most importantly, she has Dan Hardy in her corner. And, you guys know Dan Hardy is the genius of the UFC, genius of MMA. Hats off to Dan Hardy. if you have Dan Hardy in your corner, you basically have a wizard in your corner. And Dan Hardy, and I'm actually kind of joking around right now, but if we're being serious, I always say this every single time Veronica Hardy fights. Dan Hardy is actually someone where you would want to have a guy like that in your corner in WMMA. Like in regular MMA, I feel like all the coaches are pretty invested, and you get getting some serious game plans going. In WMMA, things might be a little bit more loose. Well, hey, we're just going to have a good time, man. Just go out there and have a blast. I feel like that's sort of the advice sometimes in WMMA. Just go out and have a blast. Dan Hardy is really writing down game plans. I'm sure Eduardo Moura's team has sort of like, they probably have, they do a good job of motivating her. But she's still new to the UFC. I think Veronica Hardy has more experience. She's very well-rounded. She has a mastermind of the game in her corner. And I think that her game plan is going to be good. But I think it'll be a close fight. I just don't see Moura being dominant in the grappling, dominant in the striking. She'll be good in the future, but right now, a little bit too soon. Veronica Hardy, again, this is like the level of opponent that she'll beat. Someone like Eduardo Moura before Moura is in her peak. So I'm going to go with Veronica Hardy by decision. And hopefully we see a big bump up in competition after that. But yeah, expect the Veronica Hardy decision. And yeah, we get on to the next one. Bassil Hafez versus Oban Elliott. Oban Elliott is, he's sort of like the Grant Dawson of welterweight. He's like the Welsh, Grant Dawson. He's very slow. He's a very slow fighter. Bassil Hafez is explosive. We know him from that Jack Della Maddalena fight. In his last fight, you may look at this as a bad thing because he fought Micky Gall, and Micky Gall is kind of seen as the guy that's the lowest in the totem pole in the welterweight division. Mike Perry beat his ass. A lot of people have beat up Micky Gall. He's the guy that beat CM Punk. And of course, if you've just been in the cage with CM Punk, the UFC is choosing someone that's not the most dangerous in the division to fight CM Punk. But Micky Gall actually had one of those star-aligning nights where he was just super tough, super durable. He's usually pretty durable. And I just think he had the fight of his life. And Bassil Hafez, it didn't look so great for him because he was a guy that some people had thought that he beat Jack Della Maddalena, which he just certainly didn't. But because he tested Jack Della Maddalena, and Bassil Hafez was this nobody at the time, people thought he won. But because he had just had this impressive showcase against JDM, and he goes out there against a guy that fought CM Punk and struggles, it looks really bad. It looks like maybe he had a star-aligning moment against JDM, and that's it. But Bassil Hafez still had a very good battle with, Micky Gall. And I think that there are a lot of things that I'm going to see as an advantage for Bassil Hafez coming out of that fight, namely the toughness, namely the durability, and just the ability to push the pace, moving forward, imposing his will. We've seen Bassil Hafez take down JDM. We know he has decent grappling. Defensively, the guy says he's a black belt, so I'm going to say, yeah, he's probably pretty freaking good on the ground. Oban Elliott might be a little bit better, but here's the thing. Even though he just beat Preston Parsons, who is a grappler, Oban Elliott is just not a dangerous man. He's just not a dangerous man. It's like you get in there with a guy like Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira is putting you in a rear naked choke. He's getting you with a guillotine. Oban Elliott's doing that to novices like myself. But you get to the UFC level, you may lose a point battle, you may lose a smudge battle, but you're just not in danger. And I just think that Bassil Hafez going into this fight, he's not in any danger. And when you're not in any danger and you're in a fight sport, Bassil Hafez is going to fucking run through this guy. Like, is he going to finish him? Probably not. But I think he's going to run through him. I think he's going to push him up against the fence. I think Bassil Hafez is going to go old school 90s bully mode. I think he's going to freaking shove Oban Elliott into a locker. Metaphorically, what does that actually look like in MMA? It looks like Bassil Hafez just fucking, he's biting down on the mouthpiece. He's fucking pointing to the canvas and he's pushing Oban Elliott back with a fucking jab. All right? And he's ripping to the body and he's shooting takedowns. Now, maybe Oban Elliott takes him down. I could see Oban Elliott, going for like a Jones on Gall type of takedown, timing a right hand, dragging Bassil Hafez to the ground, getting off some pit-pat shots. But I just see Bassil Hafez being explosive enough to get up to his feet He showed a good cardio. He showed amazing cardio in the JDM fight. When he's up against the fence, JDM's ripping to the body. He's rocking Bassil Hafez, and Bassil Hafez is he's staying up. He's chilling. He was able to push a pace in that fight, spamming takedowns in the third round. I think Hafez wins this off of physicality alone and aggression. Oban Elliott, I think, he's more tailored to the guys that are just not that well-rounded or don't have a crazy gas tank. Yeah, he beat Preston Parsons, and that was a good fight to win because Preston Parsons is a grappler, and a lot of people thought he would be better than Oban Elliott. But that's another slow twitch grappler. Bassil Hafez is more of a fast twitch type of grappler. He's explosive. He's willing to take damage in order to dish out lots of punishment. And I think he imposes his will well here, and I think he's going to push Oban Elliott around a little bit. So, yeah. Honestly, Oban Elliott is all right. Did he drop Val Woodburn? Or did Val Woodburn drop him? I'm sort of forgetting that. I think one guy dropped the other in that fight. Either way, maybe Oban Elliott can come back and surprise us. Tatsuro Taira was the slowest man in flyweight. And then in the next fight, he fights, I believe, Carlos Hernandez and dropped him. So, you never know what we're going to get. But I think that Bassil Hafez wins this fight. Oban Elliott is the better grappler. I'm just going to say that right now. I do believe he will be the better grappler. But I got Hafez winning this. And also, Micky Gall's a pretty good grappler too. So it's not like we should have expected Bassil Hafez to just, get Micky Gall out of there on the ground or anything. Bassil Hafez is a good grappler, even though he didn't really show a lot of it in his last fight. On to the next one. Micky Gall versus Ramiz Brahimaj. You know what? I just think this is a really interesting fight, I mean, you got to admit, Ramiz Brahimaj, he's had an interesting career. He's fought the who's who. He's always had a little bit of trouble dealing with a low kick, a little bit of trouble dealing with a jab, but he's always had a very good right hand. Now, of course, I'm waffling right now. I'm going to be honest. Ramiz Brahimaj, even though he is one of my favorite fighters, I did not watch his last fight back, man. I didn't watch his last fight back, but let's be honest, though. Ramiz Brahimaj, he's been in the UFC. He's been in the UFC. And when you're in the UFC and you're getting in the cage and you're fighting, you're going to win and you're going to lose. Now, let's stop messing around. I'm going to go with Micky Gall. I think that Ramiz Brahimaj, what he's going to look to do in this fight, he's going to look to take down Micky Gall, who has good jiu-jitsu. And I think Micky Gall is going to win this fight on the feet. Micky Gall, very tough. Lost his last fight to Bassil Hafez, and I just think that, we saw a different Micky Gall in that fight. We saw a very tough Micky Gall that was willing to take damage and impose his will. So I'm going to pick Micky Gall based on having a gritty performance in his last outing. So yeah, let's get on to the next one. This is actually a good fight. Jhonata Diniz versus Marcin Tybura. Diniz, new to the UFC. If you don't know him, he's a former Glory kickboxer. I think he had a brutal KO in his first UFC debut. I forget who it was against, but he knocked out his opponent. I think it may have been the former football player, Austin Lane, maybe. I think that's who it was. And then in his last outing, he beat Carl Williams, who, honestly, he kind of surprised me in that fight because Carl Williams is a grappler. Carl Williams is a guy that's actually one of the few heavyweights that's sort of in shape, that's kind of fast, and he has good entries on his takedowns. And Jhonata Diniz beat him. And you look at Jhonata Diniz, he's a former kickboxer. He doesn't look very in shape. He's not like, a Gall or an Aspinall, Pavlovich. He's got some flab on him. And it's kind of impressive that he was able to stuff the takedowns of a guy like Carl Williams. But Marcin Tybura is a different guy. Marcin Tybura is not Carl Williams. Marcin Tybura, he's taken a lot of time off. And of course, he earned his freedom in his last fight, which we all have to respect by beating Tai Tuivasa. Before that, Marcin Tybura used to train out of the Apex, cryogenically frozen in the Apex. They give you good food. They still feed you and all that. You're still able to train. You get 30 minutes of sunlight a day. But you got to think of it. Jhonata Diniz is hungry. He's new to the UFC. Marcin Tybura has been around. Marcin Tybura is kind of hitting that stride, and I think he's a little bit pissed off. And you see that sometimes. You saw that with Masvidal. Masvidal, in the middle of his career, he was going to decisions. He was getting robbed by Ally Quinta. He had his back taken by Damian Maia, and he went on this TV show. He went away from the UFC, went on this TV show, and he said, I got to stop being these are literally his words, I got to stop being a peasant. I need to start knocking these motherfuckers out and stop letting it go to the scorecards. Marcin Tybura, I think he was pissed off. He said, I got to stop going to these, measly ground and pound finishes on Apex cards. No one's going to see them. I got to start getting guys like Tai Tuivasa out of there, and I got to start, beating these favorites. And we've seen him do it. He's now training out of Poland, and he's training out of Poland. He's probably, just having a great time. And he's back, and I think he has a chip on his shoulder because a lot of people are going to forget about that fight. And a lot of people think you earned your freedom, you get sort of comfortable. No, Marcin Tybura is more motivated than ever. And you got a guy like Jhonata Diniz who's sort of, he's feeling himself because he just stuffed a couple of takedowns against Carl Williams. And he's undefeated. He's got, nasty KO power. And he's thinking, man, Tom Aspinall knocked this guy out. I think I'm going to knock this guy out too. But I don't think so. I think that Marcin Tybura is going to go in there. And I think Marcin Tybura is going to do what he usually does. And that's, he's going to wade forward. He's going to look for a takedown. And he's just going to slow things down. Marcin Tybura's got a very underrated check hook, by the way. If you guys haven't noticed that, that's one of his best weapons. He has a very underrated way of catching people coming in with a check hook. Now, he's got no power on. He's got no pop. Zero power. You could basically be on a bike going as fast as you can, and Marcin Tybura could plant one on you. It's not even going to graze you, but Marcin Tybura is definitely able to land it. And the thing is, it'll startle you. He's got that startling power, Marcin Tybura. He's got that. You think you're going in there, he's a heavyweight. You think you're going to get KO'd. You think you're going to get KO'd by the Marcin Tybura hook. It kind of catches you off guard because there's no pop on it. You think, wait a second, everything's all good. And then Marcin Tybura, you see Marcin Tybura, and it's like, dude, how's this guy not hit that hard, bro? He's a heavyweight. What's going on? And it kind of startles you. Now, I'm trolling a little bit. I'm messing around. I'm having a good time. Marcin Tybura actually has an underrated check left hook. He's got an underrated check left hook. I just think he's going to drag this into deep waters, I think he's going to drag it into deep waters. I think he's a better wrestler than Carl Williams. Carl Williams may be fast, but I think that Marcin Tybura is kind of like a poor man's Stipe, He wades forward, he takes punishment, and he just knows eventually I'm going to get to this guy, I'm going to break him down. He breaks people. And I think that's what we're going to see. I think Jhonata Diniz is going to have success early. He's going to light up Marcin Tybura's calf. He is going to, land a couple of big shots, stumble Marcin Tybura a little bit, but Marcin Tybura is going to be just fine. He's going to stay composed. He's going to close the distance, get the takedown. And we saw how easily he submitted Tai Tuivasa. And I know that Tai Tuivasa is not like a great grappler. He's not a good grappler at heavyweight. Jhonata Diniz might even be a tiny bit better. We've not really seen it. I mean, fair enough, he survived Carl Williams, but who's Carl Williams finishing on the ground? One thing you do have to give Marcin Tybura credit for, as I mentioned earlier, is he actually does get finishes. He actually is someone that's finished people, right? We've seen him finish a lot of guys. Walt Harris. We've seen him finish Tai Tuivasa. I mean, there's a lot of people that he's finished. It's just that they're not like highlight reel finishes because they're ground and pound finishes in like the third round of an Apex event, they're like Singapore-themed Apex cards that are on at 4 a.m. that no one's really watching. And Marcin Tybura is getting his ground and pound TKOs or his submissions. Unfortunately, I think, for that reason, he doesn't have a huge fan base, but I actually think he's pretty underrated. There's a reason why this man was able to earn his freedom in his last outing. And I think he's going to go out there, take Jhonata Diniz down. I think he's going to beat him up. He has good ground and pound, and I think he's going to find himself a submission. I think it's a little bit too early for Jhonata Diniz. He's good, but Marcin Tybura, he's a grizzled vet. He's very crafty, and I think he's going to stop Jhonata Diniz in his tracks and let him know that there are levels. There are levels to this game. You're not about the Tom Aspinall me. We have David Onama is not fighting on this card. That fight was a pretty good fight, but it fell off. Next up, speaking of crafty, the crafty vet, Jim Miller, versus another craftsman who is kind of crafty. It's Damon Jackson. The hairline versus the grizzled, crafty vet. I'm going to go with Jim Miller. Okay, Damon Jackson, he's still okay, right? Yeah, I know he got KO'd by Ilia Topuria. We've seen that highlight a million times recently, but of course that's Ilia Topuria. Jim Miller's a totally different guy. But Damon Jackson's pretty decent, right? He's got okay striking. He's got the long, rangy build. He was able to beat Anthony Hernandez, or actually, no, not Anthony Hernandez. Alexander Hernandez, or was it Hernandez that beat him? They had a very close fight. It was almost like a robbery situation. I actually forgot who won that fight. The point is, it was very close. It was like a razor close fight, Hernandez versus Jackson. But Jim Miller, make no mistake, just because he took a shitload of damage against Bobby Green and he lost that fight, and Bobby Green lit him up like a Christmas tree, that's Bobby Green, okay? And Jim Miller was still rocking Bobby Green. Now, that's Green, though. We just said that's Bobby Green, you know, and that's why Bobby beat his ass. But it's also Green, and that's why Bobby Green was getting rocked, because Green doesn't have a good chin. Damon Jackson does have a better chin than Bobby Green. He's got decent output. But the one thing that I really think Miller takes is the grappling. I think he's a much better grappler than Damon Jackson. It's a lot easier to get Jackson down compared to Bobby Green, who does have a wrestling background. I think Jim Miller can get Damon Jackson down, and I think he could submit him. And I actually think there's a good chance of that happening. Or he could just knock him out. Because if there's anything that Jim Miller's good at, it's pushing a pace. He's got really nasty leg kicks, and he's good at throwing those leg kicks at the end of combinations. Jim Miller has really good combos. He'll throw like a 1-2 with the hands, maybe a hook or something, and then he'll immediately throw a leg kick, and he does that quite often. So he's got very good leg kicks. He's kind of got the frog build. Jim Miller's got these like froggish type of legs. So he's very good with the leg kicks. And he's got that leap to him. As I said, you know, he's got that leap. Sort of like a frog. It comes with the build. Jim Miller is really good at sort of leaping into hooks, leaping into punches. And a lot of people, Damon Jackson, I don't think is going to be one of these people, but a lot of people, they underestimate Jim Miller's power and they end up getting caught, you know? But this isn't one of these rookies that Jim Miller's been KOing, right? This is Damon Jackson. He's been around for a while. He's tough. He knows how to take punishment. I think Jim Miller is going to be able to outstrike Damon Jackson. I think it's going to be close. Jackson is a guy that has the reach advantage. Actually, they have the same reach. So there's that. Jackson, how much taller is he? He's 5'11", 5'8". Yeah, I think he'll be able to maybe pick Jim Miller off a little bit, but I think Miller will get into this fight. He'll ease into this fight. And I think he'll actually pull out the grappling, whereas against Bobby Green, maybe Jim Miller was trying to please the fans by just striking with Bobby Green because he wasn't really going for takedowns. But either way, maybe he also just didn't want to expend too much energy failing takedowns because Green does have good takedown defense. But I think Miller's going to make this a dog fight. And I think eventually he's going to get Damon Jackson down, maybe take his back and choke him out. So I'm going to go with Jim Miller by a second or third round submission over Damon Jackson. I think this is going to be a war. It's going to be a great fight. And I'm happy to see Jim Miller back because I think that it would be a shame if he ended his career after the ass whooping he took against Bobby Green. So it's good that he's back. And I still think he's got more fight in him. He's 37-8, which is crazy. And of course, the winningest fighter in UFC history, I believe. Is he the winningest fighter in UFC history, or is he just the guy with the most fights? I think Cowboy might still be the winningest fighter, or is it Bobby Green? I wish they had like these stats on UFC's main page. You know what I mean? When you're looking at the cards, they should have like any record stats, right? If Jim Miller has like a record for something, which I know he does, they should at least put that down. But I'm going to go with Jim Miller by a finish. Yeah. Let's get on to the next one. This is a really good fight. Jonathan Martinez versus Marcus McGhee. Martinez coming off of a loss against Jose Aldo. Competitive fight. He did all right in that, but Aldo was just too fast for him, too much for him. Now, Marcus McGhee's very fast as well. But is he Aldo fast? No. which is crazy considering Jose Aldo's like 40 years old. He's not literally 40. I think he's like 38. Marcus McGhee is no spring chicken. He's about 36 or 35 or 34. He looks 37, but I think he actually might be 34. But he's very fast and he's very powerful. He has a lot of pop. Does he have as much pop as Aldo? He probably has similar power to Aldo, right? Because he's been knocking a lot of people out. Aldo doesn't get a ton of KOs anymore, but that's also because he's fighting the best guys in the world. It's just harder to KO them, whereas when you're rising through the rankings, it's easier to land kill shots on some of these lesser opponents than it is against guys in the top 10, which are the people Aldo's always fighting. But Jonathan Martinez made it very close with Jose Aldo. When I say close, I shouldn't say very close, actually. He was competitive with Aldo. Marcus McGhee's just been having his way. He's just been knocking everyone out pretty easily. He's 9-1. Jonathan Martinez is 19-5. What does Jonathan Martinez excel at? It's the leg kicks. Marcus McGhee, I don't know if he's going to deal with the leg kicks that great, because even though Martinez lost to Aldo and people just forgot about him, which is understandable because it's not like he had the big name anyway. He was sort of like a dark horse. Only hardcore fans were really hyping him up. Now that he lost, of course, his stock takes a dip, but he's still got some of the nastiest leg kicks in the UFC. You could argue top 5 best leg kicks in the UFC right now. Aldo just happens to be one of the best fighters ever when it comes to leg kick defense. So the fact that he even had a competitive fight with Aldo is still kind of impressive, because it's not like the leg kicks were working that well for him. I think his boxing improved in that fight a little bit too from the last fight before that. So now he's up against a guy who's not going to be Jose Aldo with the leg kick defense, who's going to be a lot easier to land the low kicks on, whether it's calf kicks or inside leg kicks or whatever. And Jonathan Martinez is very tough. He's extremely tough. He's very durable. And he will pull out the grappling as well. And we saw that in the Said Nurmagomedov fight, which I thought he lost, but it was still very close. Against Said Nurmagomedov, he was able to win moments in the clinch. He was able to win moments with clinch striking, smudging it up. And so I think he has those advantages in this fight. I think Marcus McGhee is definitely the better boxer. But do I see Marcus McGhee knocking out Jonathan Martinez? I don't. You know, he could go in there and do it. He's got a really good training camp. He's training out of that Arizona team where Sean O'Malley is and Mario Batista is. So there's a lot of great bantamweights at that gym. But I think this is going to be a huge step up in competition. It is a winnable fight. It's not like Marcus McGhee can't win this. Maybe he'll just out-damage Jonathan Martinez, and maybe he'll, expose Martinez's boxing. But it's like Aldo kind of did, but, Aldo is a much better boxer than Marcus McGhee. Marcus McGhee may have more KOs recently. He may have even a slight edge when it comes to power in 2024, but Aldo has some of the nastiest boxing combinations. He's just, he's elite. He's a savant in the boxing. So I don't think Marcus McGhee is going to totally, demolish Jonathan Martinez in the boxing in a way we've never seen. So I think Martinez wins this. I think the leg kicks are going to be big. I think he's going to be able to find moments in the clinch. And I'm going to pick him by a decision. He's going to take a lot of the sting off of Marcus McGhee's power. He's going to take a lot of the sting off of that from the leg kicks just by, limiting the movement. But let's get on to the next one. Yep, again, Azamat Murzakanov and Nikita Krylov is canceled, but we are on to Chris Weidman versus Eryk Anders. Weidman's very good, but so is Anders. I'm going to go with Weidman. Chris Weidman is one of the, actually, he did all right in his last fight. And I think Bruno Silva, who looked completely checked out in his last outing, I think Bruno Silva was a much better version of himself when he fought Chris Weidman. Eryk Anders had a fight with Marc-Andre Barrieux, who, of course, is the horns. He's like a buffalo. Marc-Andre Barrieux. He basically walks head first with his forehead out. He headbutts you, and you basically just slug in the pocket with 85% on your punches. That's Marc-Andre Barrieux. Eryk Anders had a good fight with Marc-Andre Barrieux. Very good fight. You know what? I'm actually going to go with Eryk Anders. Weidman he used to have these great leg kicks, but since the leg injury, they've not been that effective. The wrestling, maybe we'll see that wrestling from Chris Weidman, but Eryk Anders is an athlete. You know, he's an athlete. This is a guy that used to play pro ball. And, you know, I always said the guys that were professional athletes, they'll always be Olympic wrestlers. They'll always be the better wrestlers. You know, Austin Lane, we've seen his wrestling. We've seen the wrestling of guys like Brock Lesnar. All right. No, but I actually think Eryk Anders is actually maybe a sitting duck when it comes to the wrestling. Therein lies the opportunity for Chris Weidman. Maybe Weidman can take him down. Who is the last guy Weidman dominated on the ground? It wasn't Bruno Silva. It's MMA wrestling, and this is an old Weidman. This is an old man, Chris Weidman, with MMA wrestling in 2024, where, you know, this isn't the old Strikeforce days. I know Weidman, I don't think he was fighting in Strikeforce, but this isn't the Chris Lieben days where you shot a takedown from 15 yards away and you just topple people over. And you would have, you know, 10-7 rounds with Mark Coleman elbows. That's not what we're doing. What we're doing these days is we're shooting takedowns up against the fence, and guys have takedown defense because, like, everyone's training takedown defense up against the fence. Back in the day, when Chris Weidman was in his heyday, they were doing wrestling on the wrestling mat, right? They put the shoes on, they put the guard on, and they would do wrestling, Olympic-style wrestling. Nowadays, it's all up against the fence. Eryk Anders is going to have that modern-day takedown defense. And Chris Weidman, although he's a better wrestler, is the oldest post-injury Chris Weidman. So I don't think he's going to dominate the grappling. Okay? I think it's going to be a stand-up battle. And I think Anders just has a little bit more fight left in him. Whereas Weidman, he's still tough. I don't think Anders is going to knock him out. This isn't Eryk Anders going into the Roundtree fight where Eryk Anders was the guy where, you know, you heard the drums playing when Anders was coming. There was a time when Anders was getting hype. It's like a knockout guy. Things have changed. Anders is not the knockout guy, but he's got thud. You know, he had a very close fight with Marc-Andre Barriou. He's got some thud. He's got that extra toughness. Still a little bit faster than Chris Weidman. And he's got a sturdy takedown defense that I think is going to give Weidman issues. So I'm actually going to go with Eryk Anders by a decision. I'm going to go with Anders. I want to see Weidman get this one done. I'm rooting for Chris Weidman because I would love to see, you know, a classic Chris Weidman wrestling clinic or, you know, just a Weidman win would be great. I know he won his last outing, but it was a bit of a strange win given that he poked Bruno Silva multiple times in the eye. It was an eye poke TKO. Right? I mean, Bruno Silva went down to an eye poke and they called the fight after that. Normally, in my book, that would be a disqualification. But either way, they called it a TKO. It wasn't really the kind of win you want Weidman to get when you're hoping for a Weidman win. So I'm rooting for Weidman, but I think Anders is going to get it done. Okay? Mauricio Ruffy versus James Llontop. You know, I'm going to go with Mauricio Ruffy. I don't know who I'm going to go with James Llontop. I fucked up. I was going to try to play the whole, I don't know who Mauricio Ruffy is, so people would be like, "What, you're a casual, man. This guy's totally checked out." I know who Mauricio Ruffy is. I'm going to pick him to dominate James Llontop. James Llontop, 0-2 in the UFC. I've literally picked against James Llontop based on him being like a new guy to the UFC that I've never seen fight, and since then he's lost 2 times. And he's going up against the Brazilian Conor McGregor on the Fighting Nerds squad. And the Fighting Nerds right now, I don't know what they're doing, but they have some I'm going to do a gym tier list. I'm going to do a ranking system based on the best gyms in MMA. That has to be up in the top 5 because everyone from that gym has like a very unique fighting style. And they're all killers. They're all like going out there and beating the shit out of people. And they've got entertaining fight styles. They're relatively well-rounded. They're entertaining, right? So that gym is very impressive. Mauricio Ruffy, he's only had 1 fight, though. And he's getting a shitload of hype off of 1 fight in the UFC, which is just crazy. Not many. I mean, he was in my Best Prospects video just off of that 1 performance that he had. Getting a really great KO. With the left hand, his left hand looks phenomenal. His kicks look really good. He has a McGregor kind of build. He even looks like Conor McGregor. He doesn't only fight like a featherweight early McGregor, but even kind of looks like him. He's got of course, he's Brazilian, but he's basically like, instead of the red hair, he's got the brown hair. And he's got different tattoos, I guess, but he's basically McGregor. So I'm going to pick Conor to win this fight. I'm going to go with Conor. But yeah, let's be honest. Let's be serious. Mauricio Ruffy is going to beat the shit out of James Llontop. He's going to knock him out. So it's going to be a first round KO. He's going to style on him. He's going to pull him into the left hand. He's going to sneak him onto the left hand, drop him, hurt him, and maybe knock him out with something else, maybe like a head kick or who knows. He's going to KO him with something. He'll rock him with the left hand, and then he'll put him away with something else. I can't wait for this fight. It's going to be a showcase. It's going to be a classic showcase for a prospect where we're expecting a KO. Anything less would be a big letdown. You know what I mean? It'd be a big disappointment to see this go to a decision and be a sloppy fight. I think this is going to be a very easy KO or finish for Mauricio Ruffy, but maybe James Llontop has a star-aligning moment. I don't think so. Mauricio Ruffy's going to get that one done. Let's get on to the next one. Bo Nickal. As Bedtime MMA says, Bo Nickal. All right? So we've got Crafty Paul Craig versus Bo Nickal and the Wrestling Dads. Of course, the UFC is aware that this fight in and of itself is going to add about 50,000 pay-per-view buys. All the Wrestling Dads are going to be kicking their feet up, turning on they're going to grab the clicker, and they're going to be looking for it on cable television. They're not going to be on ESPN Plus. They're going to buy it pay-per-view on the TV, old school. And I think the Wrestling Dads are going to be in the building too. There's going to be a lot of Wrestling Dads in the building. Paul Craig is going to have his face paint on. He's going to have the team with him. And he's going to have the crazy stare down where Paul Craig gets out there. Joe Pyfer was talking about how he dislikes Paul Craig because Paul Craig goes out there and, stares people down like he's about to fight like Gene Silva and Yuri Prohaska against them. And he goes out there and flops around on the deck like a fish. And just sort of, Paul Craig does a bunch of roly-polies off of his back. He's not Ryan Hall, but Paul Craig's one of these guys, he'll go on his back and will just kind of flail around a little bit. And, as a hardcore fan myself, as a grizzled vet of MMA, you can't help because he's pulled it off so many times. Even when Paul Craig, dude, I love saying his name like that. Even when Paul Craig is fucking flailing around, okay? Like a guy that's never fought a day in his life on the ground. You always think he knows he's in that spot for a reason. He's there because he wants to be there. Like Brendan Allen was whooping his ass, just beating the shit out of him. I've never seen Paul Craig get beat up that badly. And the whole fight, we're all just saying, Paul Craig's right where he wants him to be. He's right where he needs to be. And the announcer's saying, oh, dude, you don't want to be here with Paul Craig. But the thing is, though, this isn't Brendan Allen. This is Bo Nickal. And yes, he did school Cody Brundage. Just, take away the context of that fight. He did school Cody Brundage, but did he Khamzat Chimaev Cody Brundage? Absolutely not. Did his striking look crisp? Fuck no. It did not. I think Paul Craig is going to be a problem for Bo Nickal on the feet. I know Paul Craig's been chinned before. I know he's been KO'd multiple times in his career. He was just KO'd by Cal Araujo. But think about it. Cal Araujo, listen, we know Bo Nickal has some pop. We know he's got some power. Even if he has slightly more power than Cal Araujo is a much better striker. We saw what he did against Jared Cannonier. He's a much better striker. And it took him until like round 3 or the end of round 2. And Paul Craig was lighting him up to the body with these great roundhouse kicks. And, we also saw Paul Craig. Paul Craig's got really good kicks. He's got good takedown entries. And if he gets on top of Bo Nickal, if he takes Nickal down, because, again, it's MMA. This is a different style of wrestling. We've seen Henry Cejudo cross over to MMA. Still a great MMA wrestler, but not as dominant as some of the other grapplers in MMA. He's not. Henry Cejudo was not Khamzat Chimaev. Right now, people are going, what are you saying, man? He ain't. He wasn't. Yoel Romero was very good. He was a great wrestler, but he wasn't getting people out of there in an instant. Now, don't get me wrong. Bo Nickal does have some good submissions. He actually has a submission game That's very good. That's a great sign, seeing him go out there and submit people multiple times, because some of these wrestlers, they don't have a submission game, right? We've never seen DC submit people. I'm joking. We've seen DC submit a lot of people, but Bo Nickal has a submission game, but Paul Craig's got the ground and pound. And Paul Craig's one of these guys. He's the Kraken. He'll get you out of nowhere with a he'll throw up he'll fucking throw up a triangle. I can't speak right now. Paul Craig's aura, man. He's got too much aura, bro. You can't even. All right, I got to stop fucking around, bro. Let's talk serious. Let's be serious right now. Okay? I just think Paul Craig's going to get him. No. You can't do that. We can't do that, man. We can't do that. I don't think this is the one. I think that Bo Nickal, this is a tough one, though, because it could be like a McGhee and Mallet situation. Bo Nickal can control the grappling early. He could take him down like Mallet was able to out-grapple Neil Magny early in their fight. But on the feet, though, Paul Craig is a better tit-for-tat striker than Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal may be more dangerous because Paul Craig's not knocking anyone out. But tit-for-tat, he's got good body kicks. He's got good leg kicks. He's got okay hands. He can defend himself. Okay, it's not like he's just getting KO'd by everyone outside of the rankings in the first opening minute. Like Cal Araujo struggled to knock him out a little bit. Still KO'd him, but Cal Araujo's a very good striker. He's improved a lot over his career. Bo Nickal's going to struggle on the feet because, again, he looks very rushed. He looks very green on the feet. He does have power. I do think he'll take down Paul Craig. I think he'll try to strike with him early, but if he doesn't KO him, and it's very possible he does KO him. We could see Bo Nickal overhand KO Paul Craig in the first round. That could happen, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Okay, it's been a minute since we've seen Bo Nickal overhand. Okay, Cody Brundage was looking like Floyd Mayweather out there against Bo. Okay, for a couple seconds. It's not like they fought for 15 minutes on the feet, but you get my point. I don't think he's going to KO Paul Craig. It's possible. It's very possible, but I'm not going to predict that to happen. What I think is likely is that Bo Nickal takes down Paul Craig and kind of controls him a little bit just with, good wrestling. But it could get dangerous in the third round when Bo Nickal expends a lot of his energy and he's in there with a crafty vet like Paul Craig, who's just, Paul Craig never, ever checks out of the fight. He knows, you know what? I can get my ass kicked right now. There's always a chance. You got to be focused for 15 minutes. Bo Nickal, he makes a mistake. He ends up on his back or he gets tired. And Paul Craig finds a takedown, which, you never know. That could happen. Or he could just get a reversal or something like that because it is going to be tough to take down Bo Nickal. I could see him finishing Bo Nickal like Magny did. We've seen Paul Craig ground and pound TKO people. All right? We've seen it. So, I actually am tempted to pick Paul Craig, but I'm not going to because I'm not going to fall to the Paul Craig is the nastiest grappler at middleweight. Even though he has a lot of submissions and he is very dangerous and he is a craftsman, I am going to pick Bo Nickal because I do think that Bo, training with Jorge and, Jorge Masvidal, he's training with the guys in PA, right? He's training out of PA. I just think they have a different system about them. No, I'm messing around. It's not their system. It's just, I think Bo Nickal wins this fight by vibes, sort of. Nah. He's going to be stronger. Let's just fucking be real. He's going to be stronger than Paul Craig. Way stronger. He's going to have way more power. And his wrestling basics, his hover. Let's call it hover. If you're a wrestler, you know this, of course. If you're not a wrestler, I'll explain it to you. Hover is when you take someone down. And you know what? Jon Jones took down Ciryl Gane, and he sort of drug him to the mat. And, Ciryl Gane's on his hands. He's on his knees. And Jones has sort of the body lock and he's on his knees. Kind of just hovering, sort of making him carry his weight. I think Bo Nickal's going to sort of have that hover over Paul Craig. And I think Bo Nickal is just going to, he's going to hover max. He's going to kind of just, Khamzat Chimaev and Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland rolls and Khamzat just sort of floats with Kevin Holland and remains on top. That's what we're going to see from Bo Nickal. Just a little bit of that classic wrestler strength / good old-fashioned wrestling control, right? And Paul Craig, if you're going to finish Paul Craig, if you're going for finishes, things are going to get tricky. But if you're just going to control him and you're testing his grappling, we saw Brendan Allen go out there and fuck this dude up. Is Bo Nickal a better grappler than Brendan Allen in MMA right now? I don't know. But I think he's good enough to at least control Paul Craig. Okay, I'm going to trust in that. And I think he does have that chance to KO Paul Craig. Paul Craig doesn't have a chance to KO Bo Nickal on the feet. On the ground, yes. On the feet, I don't think so. So early, Bo has that chance. He's going to have the hover maxing ability. And then Paul Craig, if it goes to the third round, don't sleep on a Paul Craig third round TKO, right? That could happen. Third round TKO, like McGhee KO'd Mallet, that could happen. On to the next one, Viviana Araujo versus Karine Silva. I'm going to go with Karine Silva. I'm going to go with Karine Silva to win this one. I think she's just younger. She's in her prime. Viviana Araujo's been around, and she's not necessarily getting better. Karine Silva, she's on the up and up. She's been out striking people. She's fast, and people are talking about her like she's the future of this division, whereas Viviana Araujo, she's just kind of maintaining, and she's a bit of a decision merchant. So I'm going to go with Karine Silva to win this one. Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. Here we go. I think this is going to play out the exact same way, guys. I think it's going to play out the exact same way, except I see Michael Chandler getting finished in the first round, okay? So I think it's just going to be a quicker version of their first fight. Chandler's going to go in there amped, pissed off. He's going to remind people. Let me remind him. Let me give him a reminder. And Michael Chandler, he's probably getting better at controlling his emotion insofar as like trying to please the fans, just getting amped. He's going to come out. Trump saying, and you wouldn't hear that coming. Hey, Trump saying, and you wouldn't hear. And Chandler's going to, he's going to start bouncing around and he's going to fucking jump through the roof. And then Charles Oliveira is going to come out teary-eyed. He's going to be playing the Brazilian gospel music. And he's going to take his sweet time because it's MSG. Charles Oliveira is not really a guy that fights at MSG. It's his first moment. It's MSG. It's a big arena. And I think he's going to walk out second. And there's going to be this long moment where he walks up the stairs before he enters the octagon. And Chandler's going to start crashing a little bit. Now, Chandler's going to start amping himself back up. As soon as the fight starts, he's going to come out the gates. And he's just going to throw overhand, duck, overhand. He's going to go Josh Emmett mode, overhand, duck, overhand, into a takedown. Charles Oliveira is going to get the body lock. He's going to try to sprawl it a little bit, not the body lock. He's going to grab Michael Chandler, sort of barrel hug him. If you're a wrestler, you understand the technical terms. You guys won't understand, like a classic barrel hug is when someone goes for a takedown, you sort of grab, their midsection to try to sprawl it a little bit. Casuals would have other ways to describe it, but, that's basically how you describe it. Charles Oliveira is going to fucking sprawl the takedown. Michael Chandler's going to go for a takedown. And Oliveira is going to wind up on top of Michael Chandler. He's going to eventually work his way into mount and elbow Michael Chandler into oblivion. I think we could see a first-round TKO. That's one way I see this fight happening. I just think Chandler goes out there because you know how it is. You should not shoot takedowns in Oliveira unless you're Arman or Islam because Michael Chandler is dangerous. He does have good ground and pound, and it's not like you can't have success against Oliveira on the ground, but Michael Chandler, a Chandler version of like a smart game plan is just shoot takedown. And he is a great wrestler, and he can take anyone down. But this is a different Oliveira, right? Different Oliveira than the one that Chandler fought first. And I actually think it's a maybe he's not at his peak anymore, but I think he's much bigger. He's much stronger. That's the thing. If you look at Oliveira in their first fight, he still wasn't like one of the biggest lightweights. He was a pretty big lightweight. He had a big frame, right? Long reach, very tall for the division. But now he's like gotten way bigger. He's put on a lot of muscle. And I think he's going to be a lot stronger than the last time Michael Chandler fought him. And I think it's going to be harder to kind of just push him around a little bit, right? And it's not like Chandler has this high output, good defense. Because the way you beat Oliveira, of course you have to be well-rounded. You have to put him on the back foot, pressure him with the threat of the takedown. And it's good that Michael Chandler has the threat of the takedown, but he doesn't have that defense. He doesn't have that, classic defense, high guard, composed, with a really good jab type of approach. Michael Chandler is the overhand, wild type of approach. And I think Charles Oliveira thrives in those types of fights where the guys that are going to beat him are the guys that aren't giving him those opportunities, like an Islam or Arman Tsarukyan. Arman used to be more hittable, but he's gotten better. His defense is good, and he's much more composed. Chandler's a wild man. And, I think that against a guy that's a lesser grappler, that's less dangerous than Oliveira on the ground, I think Michael Chandler could definitely maybe pull off one of those brother type of approaches, right? But I just don't see it happening in this fight. I think that that isn't Chandler, right? He can fake it against guys outside of the rankings. So when I say fake it, like he could pretend to be an Islam Makhachev and try to be super composed and clean and technical, and that would work against most fighters. But again, most fighters are not Charles Oliveira. We're talking about top 5 fighters. You got to be yourself in the cage because that's what got you here. And what got Michael Chandler here is the wild man Chandler. And it's like, yeah, Oliveira has been dropped by Chandler, and Chandler can drop anyone, but I just don't see him finishing Charles. Like, yeah, he could drop him, but I don't know if Chandler's got the precision to get him out of there. Right? Islam dropped him and he submitted him, but I think he's a better submission artist. I think Chandler, if he doesn't go out there and do the big overhand into a takedown and then get, put on his back in a scramble, Charles Oliveira TKOs them, because I think that's very likely that Charles could TKO him on the ground, right? Or just submit him, maybe beat the shit out of Chandler with elbows. Chandler tries to get up, gives up his back, gets choked out. That's very possible. But I also think it's possible that Chandler does just slug with him and Charles Oliveira catches him like he did last time. Because again, it's like against Islam and Arman, they're moving forward. They've got their guard up. They're blocking their chin and they're pressuring him with jabs and they're spamming takedowns, right? Not necessarily spamming takedowns, but they're shooting those takedowns. Oliveira kind of freezes up a little bit, right? Because he waits for these wild moments. He likes to create chaos. Chandler's going to give him that. And I think Oliveira is better in those chaotic moments. Chandler also just doesn't have the best gas tank. And so there, I think, eventually he's going to slow down if he doesn't get a finish. And I think eventually Oliveira will just finish him. Third round, he'll get it anyway. But I think it's going to be a first round KO. I think Chandler's going to go out there. Maybe he tries to fight super technical, but I don't think he's that great at it. I think he'll get outstruck. But I think he'll go out there like wild Michael Chandler, put on a show for the fans, and I think he'll get caught. Check left hook. Or just a nice right hand, like a right hand sits him down and then TKO'd up against the fence. Very similar to the time it happened in 2021. Very similar to that. So I'm thinking either a ground and pound TKO or a submission. If Chandler shoots a takedown in the opening minute, Charles Oliveira reverses the position. Or I think Charles just KOs him when Chandler presents an opportunity. I think that Michael Chandler is very good. He's dangerous, but I think Oliveira has actually always been a bad matchup for him. Right? I honestly think Michael Chandler might just do better against a guy like... I think he would lose to Makhachev. I think he would lose to Arman, but I think he might even have a better chance to have consistent success. I think, yeah, he hurt Oliveira in the first fight and arguably won the first round, but still, I think that, he's the oldest he's ever been. I mean, like everyone else, we're all the oldest we've ever been, but you get my point. He's been out of the cage for forever. He's been in like a constant state of stress about, I don't know when I'm going to fight. I've got to be in shape year round. So he's been putting a lot of stress on his body because he's been thinking that he's going to fight Conor at any given 3-month moment, right? And he's not done that. So he's just been overtraining. And Oliveira's taken some rest since UFC 300, and he's coming off of a loss. I think he's going to be very hungry. And this is a easier fight. A guy that doesn't necessarily have the best chin. I think he's going to get him out of there. He finished him the first time. I'm going to go with Oliveira first round finish. Either a knockout at the end of the first round on the feet or ground and pound into a submission. Old man Stipe versus Jon Jones. Stipe Miocic is getting the belt back. In an alternate world. Listen, I really want Stipe Miocic to win this fight. I think that'd be legendary. I love Stipe Miocic. But I think Jon Jones' striking is underrated right now. And I think that Jon Jones is going to hurt Stipe. And I think he's going to get him out of there and finish him on the ground. I think it's going to be similar to the Gall fight. It's just Stipe's going to put up a better fight. He's not going to get submitted up against the fence, but he's going to be on his back, and Jon Jones is going to be in half guard. He's going to land ground and pound shots. He's going to hurt Stipe Miocic on the ground and either submit him or just TKO him with elbows. And I think that a lot of people are looking at this as, if Jones doesn't get the takedown, well, yes, if you tell me that if you're going to go into the future and tell me Jones didn't get a single takedown and it went all 5 rounds, or it goes into the deep waters, who do you think won that fight? Or who's your pick for who's going to win that type of fight? I'm going to say, well, Stipe has a decent chance, but I do think he'll get the takedown. He has the lighter man skill, right? Jon Jones, he was one of the biggest light heavyweights in his heyday, even though he's not necessarily the biggest light heavyweight ever, since a lot of the new light heavyweights are around his size. Maybe they don't have the same reach, but they're around his size, his mass. Jones has always been a big light heavyweight, but it's not like he's going to be a small heavyweight. But he has that experience fighting much faster guys. And I know a lot of people are going to be thinking about the Dominic Reyes fight. Reyes with, his T-Rex arms, even though he doesn't really have T-Rex arms, Reyes doesn't have the longest reach. If Reyes could light Jon Jones up, if he could land the bolo uppercuts, if he could land the straight right consistently on Jon Jones's chin, Stipe can do the same thing because he's got better boxing, but Stipe's not as fast. Stipe has never been fast. Stipe has good boxing technique. He's got very good fundamentals. And, those fundamentals have improved drastically recently. I just watched Stipe Miocic's fight with Junior Dos Santos, the second fight that they had. The first fight, right, I've seen that's when JDS beat Stipe, but I'm talking about the second fight. Stipe Miocic's boxing looked horrible in that fight. He still beat JDS. He put him on his back foot. That's the way that you do beat JDS. And he was kind of just swinging for the fences, like these looping overhands, these windmill punches. It looked very ugly. That isn't the Stipe that we saw fight Daniel Cormier the first, second, third time. That's not the Stipe that we even saw fight Francis Ngannou. So his boxing hasn't always been super crisp. It's always been good. Maybe in that fight specifically, it just looked a little bad, but he's a great boxer for heavyweight, but the bar is not that high when you're ranking boxing at heavyweight. Jon Jones is used to fighting much faster fighters. The light heavyweight division just is better. Okay, maybe there are some exceptions when it comes to the top 3 fighters at heavyweight, because I understand that Daniel Cormier was good enough to beat Stipe Miocic, but also light heavyweight, right? Former light heavyweight, and Stipe eventually beat him, right? But I'm talking about the vast majority of light heavyweights are much faster and just more skilled in the grappling compared to the heavyweights. That's how it is every time you jump up the division. And I think that even though DC failed to finish Stipe on the ground, he did take him down, right? It was old potbelly DC, and Stipe Miocic just was able to even get confident in those fights and shoot his own takedowns. And he's a pretty good wrestler, but this isn't the 2019 Jon Jones failing takedowns against Santos and Reyes. This is the 2024 Jon Jones that's had, to be honest, he's not been training at full force recently because he was injured for a long time, right? But Jon Jones, there is something a little bit different in Jon Jones's approach these days. I think that his training camps are a lot more game plan focused, right? He always was someone that was good at game planning against guys like Glover Teixeira, against people like DC, but he's got Gordon Ryan in his training room, and we saw how easily he submitted Cyril Gane, and there was even videos that were coming out of Henry Cejudo and other guys coaching Jon Jones through that exact position months before he even fought Gane. And he's training these specifics. And, don't get me wrong, Stipe is one of the best fighters ever at heavyweight. He is a guy that he knows what he's doing. He actually does have a high fight IQ. I kind of chuckle when people say Stipe has a high fight IQ because he's a heavyweight. And you just think of these heavyweights as like, they're fucking heavyweights. They just go out there and slug. But Stipe actually does have a high fight IQ if you just watch him fight, right? You look at him fighting DC, he's able to make that adjustment. He's super tough. He never, ever gives up on himself in a fight. And that's the one thing that I am excited about this because, if there's anyone you don't want to be in the cage with in deep waters, it's Stipe. Because he'll go in there and he'll rip you to the body. And he'll go upstairs. And just, oh man, you don't want to rush him because he'll hit you with the right hand. I mean, Stipe will walk you onto the right hand. And he's tough as a leather boot. And he's stubborn as a tree. And that is true. Stipe is tough as fuck. He might be the toughest person of all time. With the immigrant mentality. Even though he's born in America. Stipe Miocic. With his fucking angry Croatian man blood. Okay? He's very dangerous. He's very dangerous. You know, Stipe, he's an Ohio guy. But to be honest, he does have that fucking next level toughness that Joey Diaz was talking about. Stipe Miocic is going to go out there. And if he doesn't get finished by Jon Jones, he's going to finish Jon Jones. 4th and 5th round. But that's just not going to happen, man. I don't think it's going to happen. Like, Jones is tough. We know Jones is tough. We're getting off track. I was talking about the fight IQ. Stipe does have high fight IQ. You know, I was saying I chuckle when people say Stipe is, because you think of high fight IQ, you're thinking of Demetrius Johnson, you're thinking of people like, you know, Alex Pereira has pretty high fight IQ, but in general, you normally don't think of heavyweights. Because these heavyweights, you know, for some reason, people just kind of think the heavyweights are stupid. I don't know why. Maybe that's silly. Stipe is obviously a mastermind, but either way, Stipe is a high fight IQ guy. Let's be honest. He is actually high fight IQ. He's very, very smart when it comes to making adjustments. He does have good fundamentals, right? He will chip away at the calf. Not many heavyweights, you know, they fall in love with their hands. They're not chipping away at the calf. Stipe will chip away at the calf. You know you're smart when you're chipping away at the calf. The calf kick is a smart man's, crafty man's move. But we got to be real, though. Heavyweight game planning versus light heavyweight. Jones afraid of losing his GOAT status game planning is totally different. See, that's the thing. Jones is motivated by fear of losing his GOAT status. Stipe is motivated by he might want the belt back. That's Stipe's motivation. Stipe's motivation is, even though he has been saying, you know, Stipe had to switch it up. He had to switch it up. He's taking notes. He doesn't want to turn into Holloway, who was just saying, we'll find out October 26th, brother. Stipe's always been, I want to get the belt back type of guy. No, I don't care. I want to get the belt back. I think Stipe has said, and he's slick, he's sneaky. Stipe said he doesn't care about the belt. He just wants to fight Jon Jones. He wants to beat Jones. You can't fool us, man. You can't fool us. We know Stipe doesn't care about Jon Jones. He just wants to get his belt back. That belt is important to Stipe. Not because he wants to be changed. Stipe has an obsession with the belt. It's shiny. It's bright. Stipe loves the fucking belt, man. He loves the belt. Hey, you can't hate on him. Stipe wants the belt. He doesn't even give a fuck about being champion. Doesn't care about that. Stipe wants to be the regular. He wants to be the normal guy. Okay? But he likes the belt. He wants the belt. Jones is motivated by fear of getting knocked down the GOAT list. And that drives you to sort of next level game plan, right? Because Jones is thinking, well, Stipe could win here. He could win here. What is the checkmate position where there's nothing he can do? What's that next level jiu-jitsu move that old man Stipe's not going to know, that he never learned with his his fireman training partners? Stipe's got fireman training. Stipe Miocic. I don't know if he's working in the firehouse right now. I wouldn't be surprised if he's not in the training camp for this one. But he might be. Stipe Miocic's training consists of climbing ropes, doing barbell bench press on the rusty firehouse bench press, and hitting pads in between meals or something like that. I'm joking. That's obviously not the case, but it'd be kind of funny if it was. You kind of get the vibe that it is, but like that's not the case. Stipe has some real training. Let's be very real though, and let's get serious. You know what I'm saying? There's a different level of game planning when Gordon Ryan comes in the gym, and you know Gordon Ryan. You know, people talk, oh, Gordon Ryan. You hear him talk, and you think you could push him into a locker just by the way he talks. But Gordon Ryan is a genius when it comes to jiu-jitsu, and that's actually not a joke. He is a genius when it comes to jiu-jitsu. And he'll fuck you up, you know? He's very dangerous, even though I said that He's stiff as a board. I don't think he'd do that well in MMA. Is there anyone you would rather Jon Jones, if you're going to pick Jon Jones, you'd rather him train with on the ground? Maybe a Craig Jones, right? Training specifics with Volkanovski. Craig Jones is one of those guys. You train with Craig Jones, you're getting up from bad positions. You train with Gordon Ryan, you're getting the least known techniques. This is from a total jiu-jitsu casual. I think I've done 2 jiu-jitsu classes, but you get the least known techniques on earth from Gordon Ryan. Stuff that's brand new that him and Danaher have. And that's the thing that Jones is learning. And Stipe, he's 41, 42. And he's used to DC. DC, great grappler, high-level elite grappler, even in the modern era. But DC takes you down. He gets in half guard, tries to take you back. Stipe can maybe deal with that. I don't know if he's going to deal with whatever Jones is going to do. Jones, you saw how he finished Cyril Gane, trapped the legs of Gane, and then sort of put him up against the corner and just put him in a guillotine. Now, I know it sounds super simple, but the things that he was doing to get there were very high level. Stipe is tough, and he's a guy that lasts. I don't ever doubt Stipe's ability to, just sort of power through things. But sometimes you just tap because you're checkmated, and I think that he's going to get checkmated in this fight. I think Jon Jones is going to... we talked about the striking early. We got to talk about the striking, but again, with the grappling, Stipe's grappling, I think it's going to get better as the fight goes on. If Jones takes him down early, I think it's going to be a real problem for him. But if Jones takes him down and Stipe survives, and Jones takes him down and Stipe survives, Jones is going to show Stipe his hand. Because there's probably one thing or a few things Jones has been training. That's what I'm going to do to him when I get him on the ground. This is how I'm going to finish him. Stipe survives those moments, he's going to get better because he's going to get hip to it. Stipe Miocic is a guy, again, high fight IQ. He's so good at making adjustments. He's going to get hip to it. That's what we saw in the Daniel Cormier fights. Eventually got taken down, slammed in the first round of their second fight. And as the fight goes on, he's stuffing takedowns effortlessly. He's even going for his own takedowns because he's getting super confident now that he's able to stuff them. Third fight, we saw the same shit. Stipe even out-wrestled DC in the third fight. Stipe has the ability to make adjustments, which is why I really like his chances if this goes into deep waters. But again, this is also under the assumption that if Jones doesn't get him out of there on the ground, which I do think he will early, I think he's going to drag Stipe to the ground, put him in a very bad position that Stipe is not prepared for. Because, again, this is not Volk we're talking about. This is Stipe, 42, used to getting taken down. Well, listen, he's a good grappler, but I think Jones is just a little bit better. And Jones, years off, he's going to have the specifics training. I think that if this is on the feet, I actually think Jones is going to be a little bit more competitive than people think. And you got to think about it like that. Stipe, yeah, he's 6'4". He's a big guy. He has an 80-inch reach. It's not like he's got T-Rex arms. He doesn't fight long, though. Stipe's never been a guy that fights like a long, rangy fighter. Stipe's always fought like a shorter boxer, right? Don't get me wrong. He's not like Daniel Cormier trying to trap your hands and, land hooks and dirty uppercuts and stuff like that. He is a guy that's trying to land his 1-2. But Stipe is, that's why I made that video, because he kind of fights like a 1940s boxer a little bit. He's got such sound fundamentals, but, he's throwing these short punches. He's a short punch kind of guy. And you charge him and he'll slip you on. It's a short punch man's move. You charge a guy with a short punch, and that's perfect because you're charging him, you're closing the distance. He's got a short punch. He'll meet you head on. Stipe Miocic against Jones, though. This is the thing. It's heavyweight. So Jones is just going to have that natural speed advantage now that he's at heavyweight. He's never been known for his boxing, ever. But you know what? Because he's got that threat of the takedown, we saw this against Gane. Jones was actually, he hit Gane with a couple of good punches. He hit him with a couple of good punches, and he looked kind of fast. I know that people said he looked slow, he looked fat. Yes, he looked kind of fat, but he didn't look slow to me. Watch the Gane fight. First second of the fight, Jones lands a leg kick. That is not a heavyweight leg kick. That isn't. The first leg kick Jon Jones lands, it ain't a heavyweight leg kick. That's a fast, sneaky leg kick. Instantly, he lands it. That doesn't look like a slow guy to me. The punch he lands on Gall, I think he hit him with like a right hand. That's not a slow punch. Like, does he have crazy power? No, Jones doesn't have crazy power, but he does have a significant reach advantage, and Stipe is very hittable, right? He is very hittable. And I think Jones is going to be able to have success on the feet. And how many people have we seen light up Stipe Miocic's legs? Because let's be honest, like he's got the, he's just sort of waddling in range. His legs are there to be kicked. DC was kicking his legs really well, but Jones is a much better kicker, right? Jones has nasty leg kicks. He's got nasty front kicks. He's got a really good kicking game. Is it going to be as good as it was at light heavyweight now that he has this extra weight? I don't know if he's going to be as mobile, but still, Jones is going to outstrike Stipe Miocic early. Unless Stipe just goes out there and just goes crazy for the belt first round and just fucking runs at Jon Jones, blitzkrieks him. Jones is going to win the first round even on the feet, I think. I think Jones is going to be an issue for Stipe when it comes to the kicking. Yeah, you could say, well, what about Santos? Or what about these other guys? Like, I think that Dominic Reyes is just much faster. I think he's a much faster fighter. And I also think he's a lot less predictable. Dominic Reyes had that nothing to lose type of mentality. And also he does throw kicks. He is a little bit wild. You kind of know what Stipe is going to go out there and do. He's going to hit you with an inside leg kick. And he's going to look to land a jab and a 1-2. That's basically Stipe's fight style. It's going to be really difficult to rip Jon Jones to the body as well. And I think you look at Jones, he's got the teeps, he's got the front kicks to the face, he's got the head kicks, he's got the leg kicks, he's got the knee stomps. There's just a lot of variety, and he's got the sneaky boxing. Like, he doesn't have great combos. He is hittable as well. Jones is hittable if you get him in boxing range. But he does have a little bit of that sneaky speed sometimes with his right hand. There is a little bit of that. Right? So I actually think Jones is going to be able to do well. Of course, massive reach advantage as usual. 85-inch reach, 84.5. Stipe has an 80-inch reach. And then, of course, Stipe's got, 39-inch leg reach. Stipe's got, like, the Marlon Vera O'Malley legs. I remember that stat. He has apparently, like, the same leg reach as bantamweights, but Stipe's got this crazy torso. I think Stipe Miocic, I think if, the way you beat Jon Jones in this fight, if I'm Stipe, this is the thing. I said maybe he could blitzkrieg him, but then you're leaving yourself open to getting taken down because Jones does have that light heavyweight speed, duck under a punch ability to shoot a takedown. But Stipe needs to be ultra aggressive. And he needs to be willing to take punishment. I need to see a Stipe that's willing to take tons of punishment like he was against DC. Watch third round versus DC where he's kind of seen everything DC has to offer and he's getting more confidence. He won the third round, by the way, but he was still taking damage and he's just moving forward like he doesn't care. Jones doesn't have crazy power. I think, Stipe, I just remembered this. Eye pokes. I was going to say, be willing to take damage. Be willing to just go out there, take a lot of damage, and have the underhooks ready. And I feel like that'd be good for Stipe. Have the underhooks ready and just eat damage, eat punishment, and eventually land a big old 1-2. But the eye pokes, you can't be too willing. You got to be very careful if you're Stipe because this is a real thing. It is a real thing. We saw it in the DC fights. Jon Jones is the king of this shit. Jon Jones will eye poke you. And Stipe, I actually feel bad for Stipe when I think about this. It's very unfortunate because you have to take a lot of time off from those DC fights because of the damage on his eyes. I don't want to see Stipe get poked, but I think we might see it. I really hope that Jones doesn't do that, but you just fucking know Jones is going to be willing to do anything to win this fight. And he is a little bit of a dirty fighter, okay? A little bit is an understatement. Jones is the king of eye pokes. Whatever it takes is going to be Jones' mentality on his, this is his last fight. So again, he doesn't want to lose. That's going to be tough for Stipe. That's why I say later rounds, right? Again, I think he's going to be a little bit slow. Stipe, I think Jones is going to be faster on the feet. I don't think he's going to be the stuck in the mud slow guy. I think he is going to have that extra bit of speed. I think he'll be able to keep Stipe at a distance, and I think he will be shooting takedowns early. And I think he'll get Stipe down. He'll put him into one of these specific positions that he's been working on with Gordon Ryan. And I think he'll get Stipe into half guard, bad position. He'll TKO him with his elbows, maybe find a submission, put Stipe to sleep or something like that on the ground. But if this goes into the third, fourth, fifth, you know, because this is the thing, you really do have to finish Stipe. And I understand that Jones does have a good gas tank, and he striking. I honestly think people are underrating his striking right now just because of the close fights with Reyes and Santos. But, like, let's be honest, this is not the Stipe Miocic of 2022. I honestly think this version of Jon Jones might be a tad bit better than the guy that we saw fighting Thiago Santos. Like, more motivated. I'm not saying he lost. He didn't lose to Santos. I'm not saying he had a horrible fight with Santos and lost against Reyes because he wasn't motivated. Although I'm guessing he was less motivated. But I just think he's maybe a tad bit better right now. I think Jones got this in the bag, man. But all I'm saying is this. If this goes late, third, fourth, Jones has to get him out of there. Is he going to TKO Stipe on the feet? This is going to sound... if Jones hits him with one of those sneaky right hands and we just see Stipe's too old these days, that could happen. But if this goes into the third, fourth, fifth, I honestly think Stipe's got a great chance. He's so tough. He's very tough. I hear he's eating grits in the morning. He's going to have a big bowl of grits. And, yeah. That's going to give him a good chance. Stipe's going to have, Stipe's got that slick too. Very slick too, but Jones is not just going to come running in, So, I think that we are going to see Jones get the takedown. As I said, I think Jones is going to outstrike him early, but eventually, the more time you give Stipe, he will make adjustments. The more time you give him, he will make adjustments. He'll be able to start landing punches. Because, again, the speed advantage, I think with someone that's just not as crafty as Stipe, if you have a speed advantage early, you can kind of carry that through a 5-round fight and just beat him up using your distance. But against a guy that's crafty, like Stipe, who's got a good fight IQ, who's able to make those adjustments, the speed advantage becomes less important as the fight progresses. Stipe will find ways to have success on the feet, and he still is dangerous. And again, another thing to keep in mind is he's a lot bigger than he was when he fought Francis. And it not only when he fought Francis last, but when he also fought DC in the trilogy. Stipe had been leaning out over the course of 4 fights. First fight with DC, he was bigger than the second fight in DC. Second fight, he was heavier than the third fight with DC, and he kept losing weight. He thought he was going to go to a trilogy with Francis. He said, I need to get bigger. I can't beat Francis Ngannou if I'm like 30 pounds less than him. That's just silly. So he's put on a lot of weight. He's been able to maintain that extra weight. So he is going to have that extra pop. And I think historically, Stipe has had his big KOs when he was much heavier. That's when Stipe was knocking people the fuck out. It was back in the day when he was fighting JDS, when he was fighting Overeem, when he was fighting Daniel Cormier in the first fight. Like, I know he lost that fight, but still, Francis, landed some nasty shots on Francis in the first fight. He's going to have some pop this time. He's going to have some pop. I honestly can't wait for this fight. I think it's going to be a good fight. I hope you guys enjoy this video. Until next time.